Hey guys, Toby Mathis here, and today we're going to go through a step-by-step guide on creating anonymous real estate ownership with a land trust. A lot of you guys know that we use land trusts here at Anderson, and we've been talking about them for years. You can look at my channel and the channel of my partner, Clint Coons, to learn about land trusts. We've talked about them extensively for better than 2 decades. There's just nothing better than using a land trust in conjunction with an LLC as far as creating privacy. What I want to show you today is exactly how it works so that there's no confusion and that you're able to do this. You want to make sure that you're working with a good attorney and that they know what they're doing. You could always reach out to us, by the way. Just put in the comments that you'd like a consult. But what you want is to follow a methodical step-by-step approach, and this is what we're going to do today. So let's just start with the idea of what a land trust is and what it isn't. So a lot of people get confused because not all states have land trust statutes, but all states allow common law trusts. So you can have a land trust in every state. So if you have an attorney who says, no, we don't recognize those here, they just don't know what they're talking about. You can use it in all 50 states. There are states like Florida where there's statutory protections for land trusts so that you can actually have asset protection with a land trust. But for the better part of 90% of the jurisdictions or everywhere else, there is no asset protection from a land trust. So you use them in conjunction with something like an LLC. It depends on your state and depends on what you're doing, but you're going to use an asset protection vehicle to hold a beneficial interest. So let me explain how that land trust works. You're going to have a grantor, who is you, generally speaking, or you're giving the asset, the real estate in this case, to a trustee who holds title. So that trustee is on title, and they're holding it for the benefit of a beneficiary. Most people, when they set up trusts, when you see this is no different than a living trust, by the way. It's a revocable document. You can change it, which means you can cancel it out. You could just destroy it if you want. But when you set these things up, what we're really doing is taking the trustee and putting them on the deed. And that's what is public. So if we can make sure that your name's not on there as a trustee, then we can actually affect anonymity. And it works in every state. It's not harder than this, guys. When people are saying that it doesn't work or there's no way to do it in my state, it's just because they don't know. And if they're not up on something, they're generally down on it. And so they say, no, you can't do that here. It works in all 50 states. How do I know? I have over, it's close to 400 properties now. Myself and my partner, Clint, we invest in all over the country. We've been doing this for decades. And we know it works because we use it on a daily basis. You don't have to. There's no guesswork here. That beneficiary, you could very easily make that an LLC, or like if you're in California, you don't want the franchise tax, you can use a Wyoming statutory trust or things like that. But it's a very effective way to isolate the liability. So we use the LLC for liability, right? We're going to isolate that so that if there's that piece of property and there's something bad that happens, it stays within that box. Again, they could take the property, but they don't come out after here and grab your money, right? That's what we want to make sure is they can't do that. Just stop that. So here we have our land trust where we're putting title of the property, and it literally is kind of like this. Let's say that I have the ABC land trust, and it would be ABC land trust dated, whatever the date is, by its trustee, and you can use a nominee trustee. You could use an attorney, or you can use an anonymous LLC. For example, we use them in Wyoming. So it could be ABC Land Trust by its trustee, ABC LLC. And if there's no requirement that your name be put in the public record, and there is none in Wyoming, for example, then your name does not appear on that document anywhere in the public record. So all of a sudden, we have a piece of property. Let's just say this was 123 Main Street. Your name's not going to appear anywhere on that. They don't even, when I say they, the public doesn't even get to see the LLC associated with it. And if you're smart and you know how to use anonymity in LLCs, which we teach all the time on this channel, you could have your LLC to where your name's not associated with the LLC either. So nobody could reverse engineer this. They can't go and say, I'm really going to dig into that Toby guy and see what he owns. All right. If I want you to see something, I could leave something out there. For the most part, you're not going to see a fraction of the entities that I own or control. And I can make it to where you certainly can't see my real estate holdings. You're just good luck, right? And so let me show you step by step how to do this. So it's actually not that difficult. So you now know what the land trust is. So we're going to create, step number one is going to be to create a land trust. So it's not any harder than what you think. You hire an attorney, or like you hire us, and we'll draft up a land trust for you. And it's a trust agreement that is private. It's not filed in any public record. Then inside that land trust, I am going to appoint a trustee to sign. So that trustee, a lot of times they're going to say it could be an attorney. It could be an LLC that's anonymous. So you have anonymity, but that trustee is who's going to end up being on that deed. And so what we use here is, generally speaking, we're going to either use my partner's son, Carter. He is on a lot of these documents, but we prefer to have the client actually set up a Wyoming LLC to hold the title. And so that's what it will be. When you do the deed and you create the deed, it's going to be that trustee. So let's just say it's ABC LLC, trustee of the, and I did 123 Main Street. So I tend to do this, and not everybody does what I do. I'm just going to say there's 50-50 on it. I tend to use the address because I get confused otherwise. We have too many properties. So I use the address as the trust name. So I would use the 123 Main Street Trust. And that's what would be in the public record. And people are like, wait a second, where's your name? You don't have to have your name on there. It actually works like a charm. So you draft the deed so that it doesn't. And again, this is something that a lot of firms, if they do this type of work like we do, we'll draft everything for you. And so you're putting in the trustee's name. So it's going to be the ABC LLC trustee of the 123 Main Street Trust, and that's it. And then you actually file that deed. Depending on your county, this is something that's either very easy to do. You just have to follow the rules of the jurisdiction where that real estate is. So then you file it. And I'm just going to say file that deed. Now, what's on the public record associated with that property? It is ABC LLC, trustee of the 123 Main Street Trust. That's it. It doesn't have to be any more difficult than that, guys. And that's about as long as it's ever going to get, right? So you just create an anonymous LLC. I would not own other things in the LLC acting as your trustee, because that's what's out there as the trustee. Like if you're going to get sued, it's going to be that trustee that gets sued. Now, do they have a bunch of exposure? No. But still, I wouldn't want to have my stock account sitting in that. I'm just going to have this as an entity that's sole purpose in life is just to sign and be a trustee for my different land trusts. And it works, again, like a charm. Well, what about my state? Well, you can still be a trustee. It's not doing anything, and I'll explain why. Because that trustee, quite often, if it's an attorney, it's going to resign. Sometimes this trustee might resign and appoint another trustee. But it's not really doing anything because the beneficiary is the one who has control of the rents and the access to the property. So in these trust agreements, that trustee is just there to put their name on there. So if you are using, so you file it. And then I'm just going to put here, if, and this is a big if, the trustee is an attorney or third party, you could have family members or friends or whatever else put themselves on as the trustee as well. Again, we're just keeping your name out of there. So like if you're, I'll use real life examples so you understand why we're doing this. Folks that were in law enforcement sometimes don't want everybody to know what their name and put it all out there. Some states have protections, some don't. But if you're going to be an investor, The last thing you want is somebody that you arrested going and finding you. Or I have a doctor who's a psychiatrist, and the last thing he wants is his patients to start showing up at properties. So he just doesn't want his name on things. Or if you're a business owner and you already have a big enough bullseye on you, if you're wealthy, the last thing you want is everybody to know what you own. There's no reason for it. There's nothing nefarious that we're doing here. If you're opening up bank accounts, you still have the Bank Secrecy Act. We still have the Corporate Transparency Act to comply with. So it's not like we're hiding it from the feds, still going on your tax return. But from a public record standpoint, nobody gets to see that this is your property unless you want to tell them. So if you have this trustee or a third-party trustee, then what they're going to do, they're going to resign. Then that third-party trustee is going to resign. Now, in my office, what I would say is this is when we have an attorney step in, then you're going to get the attorney resignation. If it's an LLC, you don't need to do this step. So if you have an anonymous LLC, then this is maybe a if. This is a big if. These next steps, you don't have to do it. If you have the nominee LLC, then you're good right here. You're actually great. You filed it and you're good to go. All you have to do is make sure that that beneficial interest gets assigned over to an LLC and you're good as gold. And that's part of that land trust agreement. And again, I'll go over that before we're done. I'll make sure that you understand that. And I'm being very, very clear. But in this case, there's a resignation. And this is not a public record. In other words, in the public, it says a name as the trustee. So for example, if we didn't have ABC LLC, if we had John Jones, or something like that, whatever, as the trustee, then John Jones resigns. All we're doing is putting in a new trustee. John Jones could even create a pocket deed so that you could keep with you. So like if you had a family member or somebody and you were just nervous and you're like, gosh, bless it, why am I putting another third party on there? I am so nervous. They're going to steal my property. Well, they can't steal your property. The beneficiary has control of the property. But I get what you're saying. And if you're really nervous about it, have them prepare a deed where they transfer it from trustee to trustee. So John Jones transfers it to ABC LLC. And now you're like, oh, okay, now I feel better. And you can keep that in your file cabinet. You can keep it as what's called a pocket deed. You file it if needed. Like if hey, I'm going to sell the property and I really don't want to have John come on and have to sign anything. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a pocket deed. And I'm going to have that John Jones to ABC LLC. And then I'm going to file it before I sell it so that I control the closing of that transaction. So you do that resignation. Let's just go back and assume that we have a public, that we have a third party. And then after that, then you have a new successor. So they resign and appoint, and I'm just going to put it down here, successor. Or the beneficiaries are electing a successor if you didn't have one. But again, the pocket deed solves that if you want to do that. Otherwise, you just have that successor trustee, and they now control everything. They could go file another deed if they want to. They don't have to. Technically, they're supposed to kind of just maintain that trust and keep it going, but there's no tax return necessary for the trust. The taxes flow to the beneficiaries. And if you're using an LLC, it goes right in as though the property was held in the LLC. That's why these things are so effective. This is no different than if you just put the property in the LLC. From a liability standpoint, you get all those protections. From a tax standpoint, still flows under your tax return. But what is happening here is you removed your name out of that public record, and it works so great. So let me just reiterate this one more time. So you're going to buy a property. You buy the property. Maybe you put the cash in. I've done this a million times. This is how it works. And I buy it in the name of, and I'm just going to pick let's think of a different address. Let's think of a 1234 Smith Street, or 1234, what's a good one? I don't want to be Main Street. 1234 Iris Avenue. Okay, so we do 1234 Iris Avenue. And there's our little property. We want to make sure that we have anonymity, and we want to make sure that we have asset protection. So I set up as beneficiary, And by the way, if you're transferring a property with a mortgage into this, so you're not buying this fresh, let's say that you already have a property with a mortgage, you may have to be the beneficiary on your initial documents, but then you can assign the beneficial interest to an LLC. So I'm just going to say, for my purposes, my beneficiary is an LLC. My trustee is ABC LLC. Wyoming entity. My name's nowhere on there. And it's just going to go ahead and be ABC LLC. Trustee of the 1234 Iris Avenue Trust. Sometimes you add the dated date. A lot of times I do that just because I like it really long. So it uses up all the, it makes it just look really crazy on an asset protection search. Like if somebody's looking for assets, they see these things and they're like, oh my God, because it's going to eat up all the figures. So it's 123, or excuse me, ABC LLC trustee of the 1234 Iris Avenue Trust, dated, June 1st, 2029, whatever the date is that you signed it. So you have that sitting there on the public record. The beneficiary sitting here as this LLC. This is a different LLC, so I'll call this the ABCDEF. We'll just pick the next letters. Let's say that this is part of my plan. Maybe this has a holding LLC. If you know how we structure, you're going to have your holding LLC own a bunch of other LLCs. So you could have a whole bunch of these LLCs floating around out there. And this particular one is we're isolating the ownership so that they don't even see the LLCs. So nobody even knows that an LLC is the beneficiary. The only thing they see out there is ABC trustee of the 123 Iris Avenue Trust. And if you do this, then on an annual basis, there's no upkeep on that trust. Like it doesn't have to do a tax return. It's a grantor trust with actually the beneficiary paying the tax. So the beneficiary is going to be the responsible party because it's entitled to all the income and benefits and use of enjoyment of that piece of real estate. So you're renting that real estate. It's going to flow into your structure, which is going to flow into your holding company, which is going to flow onto your personal 1040, and you're happy as a clam. It's no different than, again, if you own these things all in separate LLCs, works like a charm. And the big thing that we accomplished here is getting your name out of the public record. That's exactly how it works. It doesn't have to be more difficult than that. You don't have to overthink it. It's basically a grantor trust in any state in the United States. This works. For those of you who are in Arizona, it's like, no, we have to disclose the beneficiary here. Yeah, okay. So or the grantor here. It's the right of a beneficiary, so you're not going to sue yourself. So let's take that off the table right now. What you're doing is you're putting these properties into the name of a third-party trustee. That third party could be an anonymous ownership LLC in Wyoming, and you've just removed your name out of that public record. Can you do this even with things like your home? Yes, you can. There's privacy trusts so that if you don't want people knowing what you own, you can keep it private. And before somebody loses their mind and says, well, what about the Corporate Transparency Act? We're not hiding it from the government. The Corporate Transparency Act is the Treasury. It's just like your tax return. I can't go pull your tax return and read it. You have to choose to give it to me. I can't go public record search and see what you paid last year in taxes. I don't get to do that. There's tax returns that have been leaked illegally, and people have gone to jail for for leaking Trump's tax return, and Musk and Warren Buffett. That employee actually got arrested, and I think it got 3 years or something like that for disclosing those returns. It's not a public record. So the Corporate Transparency Act is not a public record. You don't get to just go search it. What people can search is real property records and your name. And here, your name's not going to show up on these real estate records, so you don't get targeted as a result of what you own. Now, it doesn't mean that you get to hide this if you get sued and somebody gets a judgment against you. They're going to ask, and you'll be disclosing more than likely that holding company, and then they could start digging into things from there. So it's not like it's hey, we're nefarious. We can prevent anybody from ever paying a nickel to creditors, and they can rip people off and get away with it. No, it doesn't work that way. But what this does do is it prevents people from targeting you because of what you own, as opposed to whether you have genuine liability. That gets rid of those frivolous suits, and that gets rid of those folks when if you have a liability occurrence, instead of having a 5 or 6 year nightmare. And by the way, we've had cases where we've had siblings. One was our client, one was not. Same liability. They were both responsible. The party that we worked with, they were able to get done within 6 months, get out of a lawsuit. The other party, because they could see everything they own, they knew they had a bunch of LLCs out there, they targeted the heck out of them. And they went through about a 4-year ordeal before settling for multiple higher of what our client had to do. The only difference was they thought that party had money and they thought our client didn't. We've seen that play itself out over and over and over again. You create a lot of issues for yourself when you let everybody know what you own. It's better to keep that private, keep it to yourself. If you want to let somebody know what you have, by all means, tell them. You're not hiding it from the government. You're still paying your taxes, but you're not creating a situation where you're putting a bullseye on your back. Hey guys, if you like this type of information, please share it and also like and subscribe. If you would like someone to talk to you about putting together a land trust for you where there's privacy, put land trust down in the comments. Just type in land trust and somebody will send you a link so you can have a free consultation to see whether it makes sense for you. Thanks, guys.